What if female Deku was an enforcer in Ruby, Part 4? As Izumi was in the forest, as then she would hear explosions and all that, fighting, as then she would get up towards, look at Beacon from the forest, as it's seemingly being attacked, as she would be noting the chaos and the fighting all around. It seems like someone's making their move. As then she gets a large evil force presence, as several Grimm come charging from the place behind her, as she uses her lightsaber to block and cut several of them down. And she uses the force to simply move them away. As then one elephant Grimm comes charging towards her, as she would jump and then cut some of the armor off, but she knows that some of the armor on the elephant's back is protecting from the lightsaber. As this would shock Izumi a bit, something that can defend against a lightsaber. As then the elephant would try to charge her again, as she would just go underneath and just cut its belly open before it falls to the ground. As then she would use the force to send all of the Grimm else off the cliff nearby. As she would look towards Beacon, where it's being attacked. As she runs towards Beacon, as she gets to the front gate, as then she notices a big, large light just hitting across, coming across, filling pretty much the entire sky. As she covers her eyes and looks away, as she looks back, as the big Grimm on top of Beacon just suddenly starts to fall down and squish. As Izumi pulls out binoculars and quickly zooms in and takes a look and sees Cinder falling along with the beast, and then she looks back up and sees an unconscious Ruby. So that was her. As she then quickly just spins around and simply cuts a Grimwolf in half. As she looks back and sees a whole bunch of Grimm coming towards her. As she simply just stretches her neck before lifting her arm, which lifts up a Grimm bear before sending it towards another Grimm, as several Grimm come charging for her. As she spins her lightsaber before tossing it, cutting several Grimm, as one of the Grimm tries to claw her in the back, as she just grabs it with her fist before flipping it around, as she puts her arm out, grabbing the lightsaber and then cutting it in half. As then one comes charging towards her, and one of the Crow Grimm starts to send feathers towards her. As she would just jump, as the feathers would go and miss Ruby, as she would jump over the Grimm that was charging her, and then just lift up the Grimm that was charging her and send it to the Crow as they collide, falling down and falling onto one of the pieces of stone. As she would just look back and see a number of Grimm coming towards her. This place seems to be flooding them. As she would look back towards the building and see a fire. I'll deal with all of you later. As she raises her arm, which lifts the ground to make like a wall between the Grimm and her. But first, I can't let a certain person with the Force perish just yet. As she would walk towards the main building before jumping up. As she would reach the top and sees an unconscious, Ruby about to get eaten by a Crow Grimm, as she would throw her lightsaber, decapitating the Crow Grimm's head as it would land right next to Ruby. As the body's about to fall on Ruby, Izumi uses the Force to stop the Crow before tossing it off the building. As Izumi would approach Ruby's unconscious body, as she looked down before pressing her fingers against her neck to see if a pulse. You are still alive, that's very good. You would make a fine enforcer. As she picks up Izumi with the Force, as she just simply jumps off the building while holding her with the Force. If I had my ship, I would easily be able to get out of here. As she's carrying Izumi, as she simply just burst open one of the doors before walking in and setting her in the library area, which she put out with the flames a bit with her Force powers, as she would set Ruby underneath one of the shelves that had fallen over. as she had come towards Ruby. As she would open her eyes to see the silver eyes. Ah, so that's the thing that releases such a presence. That must have what turned that grim to stone. Very powerful. Lord Vader would be pleased to have a person with powers like yours at his, well, service. As she would stand up before simply just ignite her lightsaber, piercing a grim that was coming towards her. I guess I must clear out these filthy creatures before I can start training you. As she would walk towards the door, as she would walk outside before lifting a bookshelf with the force and blocking the entrance. As she would look out, as there's several grim out there. As she would grab her secondary lightsaber. It's been a while since I've ignited both. As she ignites her second lightsaber, as the grim come rushing towards her. As she would, connect both her lightsabers and start spinning around, chopping off several of the grim's limbs and heads. As she would toss her lightsaber to cut off, an elephant grim charging at her, it would cut it directly in half. As she would turn around and punch one of the bear grim that was coming towards her, sending it towards a wall, before grabbing the, 3 grim wolves that were trying to get through the bookshelf that Izumi had placed to protect Ruby inside the library, as she pulled the grim back, sending them flying into a grim that tore them apart. As her lightsabers came back, as she grabbed them before disarming them from each other, and then just starts cutting them apart. As she would slide under a grim, cut its legs, toss her other lightsaber in the air, cutting a crow grim that was coming towards her. As she would grab it and just look at the mountain of grim coming towards her. As then she would look out in a distance, as she would see a large elephant grim about the size of several buildings start approaching. That's a large grim. I didn't know they could get that size. As then she would notice 2 more in the distance. As she would turn around, as then she would focus all of her force powers, as she would lift up a building from beacon before sending it like a spike spear towards one of the grim elephant's heads, as it would pierce through, as it would fall over, leaving a crater, as the other 2 start to charge forth. As Izumi has used a lot of her force energy. As she then focuses all of her force energy left to pick up the other 2 buildings that are intact with sharp edges, as she would toss them towards the elephant grims charging forward, as it would manage to take one down, but it would only pierce one in the side, as it would start approaching her. As Izumi is on one knee, as she's used a lot of her force power. As she focuses what she has left into a large lightning attack, as it would shock the big elephant grim, as she's focusing all of her force energy left into this attack, as it would shock the grim until it would eventually die, as it would fall over. As she sighs, as several more grim start to approach her. This won't end, will it? As then she gets back up, ignites her lightsaber before cutting off another grim. As she starts to stumble a bit, as she gets hit in the back by one of the grim, as she's sent to the ground. As she would raise her hand and throw the grim away. As then several feathers would come towards her, as it would scrape her shoulder. As she would then just cut one of the more grim that's jumping towards her. As her movements are a bit sluggish after fighting for a while. As she's eventually backed up to the door. This is bad. As she looks around, as her armor is a bit cut up, as she has several cuts and wounds from holding them off, as they just don't seem to stop coming. As then suddenly her earpiece starts to repeat, Enforcer Izumi, your backup has arrived. As then several bombers, TIE fighters, would come in and start bombing the Grim. as they would be shooting down the Krogrim as well. As Izumi would look up and just see a destroyer descending. As she would smile. About time you got here. As she lays down against the door. As then a landing craft would land as several troopers come out as they approach Izumi. As one of the commanders says, "Are you alright, Enforcer?" "There's a girl in there, under a library shelf. Bring her aboard." As she stands up before walking like she's fine onto the shuttle before sitting down. As the troopers went in and grabbed Ruby as they load her onto the ship. "Alright, take us to the destroyer." And then she would just fall over before passing out. As then the medical trooper went over to attend her. "Is she alright?" She had used a lot of energy and seemed to have been fighting for quite a while. We arrived just in time to reinforce." "Well, that's good. Once we get to the destroyer, we shall get all that data that she had required." As a little time later, she wakes up in the medical wing. As she would shake her head. As she kept getting like the taunts from Bakugo while she was in her dreams. "You'll never become a hero. You'll never become to anything. You're just useless, Deku." As she's awake, as she's thinking of this, she then accidentally used the force that destroys the medical robot. As then she comes back to reality. "Apologies for the disruption. Now, where is currently the person I told you to bring aboard? She's currently unconscious still." Why do you ask, ma'am?" "That will be a new enforcer. Very soon." "How can you be so sure, ma'am?" "I'm confident in her strength." "She will need a different type of weapon. But I will discuss that with Lord Vader." As she gets up, "Lord Vader wishes to speak with you." As she's surprised, "Lord Vader wishes to speak with me." "Yes." "Very well." As she would grab a cloak before putting it on, as she's about to grab her mask, she then decides to leave it. As she walks towards the command room, "I would like everyone to leave immediately." As several of the commanding officers, the team up front, would leave, and the troopers as well. As then a hologram of Lord Vader would appear. "Lord Vader. Inquisitor Enforcer Izumi. It's good to see you're still alive." "Why, yes, Lord Vader. What about this pupil of yours that you said?" "She's not yet my pupil, sir. She has a very strong connection with the Force. Not stronger as yours, but a pretty solid, strong connection with the Force. She also has the power to turn creatures into stone." As this would catch Lord Vader's interest. "She can turn creatures into stone. I saw it with my own eyes, Lord Vader. She could be a valuable asset to us. But there's also a great evil on this planet I would wish to destroy first. A large Grim. Why do you wish to deal with this beast?" "I don't know why. Call it a faith of loyalty to the Empire. To get rid of such a beast would be an honor. I can sense its power. It's immense. If it's left to its lonesome, it could be a problem in the future if we decide to conquer this planet." "Very well. Train this pupil of yours. Defeat this beast. And report back. I expect good results, Enforcer Izumi." "I shall not let you down, Lord Vader." As she bows. as the hologram message ends, or call ends. As she gets up, it seems all is going to plan. Lord Vader's probably foreseen this. As she looks over to the commanders as they start to come back in. Report on the status of the war between the Rebel Alliance. The Rebels have made a significant amount. In fact, the Death Star was destroyed. The Death Star was destroyed? Yes. The rebels have to be a nuisance. Very well. Prepare, troops. We will be landing back on the planet soon. I will send the coordinates. But first, I must speak with Ruby. As she had gotten her name from Whis saying Ruby's name while she was in the closet. And that is the end of part 4 of What If Female Deku Was an Enforcer in RWBY. Make sure to like and subscribe for more.